I'm a 32-year-old guy and my wife Lauren is 30. We've been married for 3 years, and overall our relationship is solid. We both work full-time, and while we've talked about kids in the future, we're not in a rush. Life was good until her parents started making it clear that in their eyes I wasn't part of the family. Lauren grew up in a very traditional household. Her parents, Mark and Susan, have always been deeply involved in their kids' lives. At first, they didn't seem overly controlling, just the kind of parents who like to have a say in everything. I noticed early on that they were polite to me, but not warm. I was never treated badly, but I wasn't treated like family either. I figured they just needed time to get to know me. I was wrong. The first real sign that something was off happened last Thanksgiving. We had dinner at her parents' house, and when we sat down to eat, I realized that the seating arrangement felt intentional. Lauren was at the center of the table right between her parents, while I was placed at the far end next to a distant cousin I had never met. At first, I brushed it off, but throughout dinner I noticed that all the conversation was centered around Lauren and her family. It was as if I wasn't even there. That Christmas, things escalated. Lauren and I assumed we'd be spending it with her family again, but when she asked her mom about plans, Susan casually told her, "It's just family this year." Lauren was taken aback. She clarified, asking if that meant I wasn't invited. Her mom just repeated, "It's a family gathering." No further explanation. Lauren was upset but didn't want to start a fight. She declined the invitation, and we spent Christmas at home together. I could tell she was struggling with it. She had never been excluded from a family holiday before. Later I brought it up with Mark and Susan. They acted surprised and insisted it was a misunderstanding. They promised it wouldn't happen again. Then New Year's Eve rolled around. Lauren got another invite, but this time they made it explicit. She was welcome, but only if she came alone. That was when she really started questioning things. She confronted them, asking why they kept excluding me. They gave a vague excuse about family traditions and how spouses needed to earn their place over time. Lauren wasn't having it. She told them she wouldn't attend family events without me. There was tension, but they backed off, at least for a while. A few months later, they sent out invites for Easter. This time, they included both of us. It seemed like they had finally accepted me. But then, Lauren got a separate message from her mom. "We figured OP would probably be busy, so just let us know if you're coming." That was the moment we both knew it wasn't a misunderstanding. They were still trying to push me out, just in a more subtle way. Lauren was frustrated, but I didn't want to put her in a position where she had to choose between me and her family. I suggested we step back and see if they'd come around on their own. They didn't. Now with the holidays approaching again, things have come to a head. A few weeks ago, Mark and Susan told Lauren, point blank, that she was expected to spend Thanksgiving and Christmas with them, alone. No discussion, no invitation for me. Just an expectation. Lauren pushed back immediately, asking why they still wouldn't include me. That's when they laid it all out. "This is how our family has always done things," Susan said. "Spouses don't come until we feel it's right, until they feel it's right." I've never heard of anything like this. Every other married couple and their extended family has always been included in events without issue. But for some reason, I was being treated differently. I told Lauren that I wouldn't tell her what to do. If she wanted to go, I wouldn't stop her. But I also made it clear, if she agreed to spend the holidays with them while they continued to exclude me, it would change things between us. I wasn't going to spend the rest of our marriage waiting for them to decide that I was worthy of being included. That was my breaking point. And now, Lauren has to make a choice. Update 1. Lauren didn't waste any time. As soon as her parents made it clear they expected her to spend the holidays with them alone, she called them back. The conversation started off calm, but it didn't stay that way for long. She told them plainly, if I wasn't welcome, then she wasn't coming either. They pushed back immediately. Mark, her father, repeated the same excuse they had used before. Spouses need to earn their place over time. It was just tradition. But that didn't hold up. Lauren's brother's wife had been welcomed into the family from day one, as had her sister's husband. The trial period clearly wasn't a real rule. It was just an excuse to exclude me. He spoke like this was some long-standing family rule. Something sacred, something unchangeable. But Lauren knew better. Every single one of her siblings' spouses had been included in family gatherings from day one. There was no waiting period for anyone else. Just me. Susan, her mother, tried another approach. She told Lauren that one day, when you have kids, you'll understand. Family comes first. It was a loaded statement, and Lauren didn't miss the implication. She wasn't just supposed to fall in line with their rules. She was supposed to accept that her husband wasn't family in their eyes. Lauren didn't hesitate. OP is my family now. That was when the conversation really went off the rails. Mark, sensing that they were losing control of the situation, suddenly suggested a compromise. If Lauren spent this year's holidays with them alone, they'd consider allowing me to attend next year. No guarantee. No actual explanation of why this trial period was necessary. Just an offer to reevaluate my place in their family after another full year of proving loyalty. Lauren wasn't having it. She asked them straight up, "Why do you get to decide when my husband is family?" Silence. Then came the deflection. "It's just how things have always been. It's just our way." They refused to give a real answer because there wasn't one. There was no logic behind it, just control. And when that didn't work, they turned the blame onto me. I was the problem. I was manipulating Lauren, keeping her away from them. Susan started talking about how I had changed Lauren, how she wasn't as close to her family anymore, as if marriage itself wasn't a perfectly normal reason for people to start prioritizing their own household over their parents' expectations. Lauren didn't budge. She told them flat out she wasn't going anywhere unless I was welcome. That was when the guilt tripping started. Mark's voice got softer, more wounded. He talked about how they never get to see their daughter anymore, and how this isn't how family should be. Susan started crying. Real or fake, it didn't matter. The goal was the same. Make Lauren feel like she was hurting them by standing her ground. She didn't fall for it. Then came the unexpected blow. Mark snapped. If you're choosing OP over your family, then maybe neither of you should come to any family events. That was it. No more pretending, no more excuses. They weren't just excluding me anymore, they were punishing Lauren for not falling in line. For the first time since this whole thing started, Lauren looked genuinely shaken. She never thought her parents would go that far. She tried one last time to reason with them, but they dug in their heels. If she wanted to be part of the family, she had to do it on their terms. Otherwise, she could stay out. After the call ended, Lauren sat in silence for a long time. Then she grabbed her phone and started messaging her siblings. She needed to hear the truth from them. Her brother and sister both confirmed it. This was 100% about me. Their spouses had always been welcomed at family events without issue. There had never been a waiting period, no tradition about earning a place. I was the only one being treated differently. That was the final straw. Lauren sent her parents one last message. I won't be speaking to you until you can respect my marriage. Then she blocked their numbers. But within days they started reaching out using new emails and alternate phone numbers. For the first time in her life, she was no contact with her own parents. Update 2. A few days after Lauren cut off contact with her parents, her phone lit up with a message from her brother. It wasn't long, just a single sentence. I think I know why they're acting this way. Lauren handed me her phone and asked if I wanted to see it. I told her it was up to her. If she wanted to know, I'd support her. If she didn't, that was fine too. She stared at the screen for a second, then typed back, "What do you mean?" A minute later, another message came through. It's about Daniel. I had never heard that name before. Her brother asked if we could talk privately. I told Lauren I'd handle it. If it was something that would hurt her, I'd tell her when she was ready. She nodded and left the room. I called him back, and he didn't waste any time. Before I came into the picture, Lauren had been engaged. His name was Daniel, and her parents had loved him. Not just in a he's a good guy way. They saw him as their ideal son-in-law. He came from an old money family, with connections to powerful people in their community. Mark and Susan had known his family for years. To them, Daniel wasn't just a great match, he was an investment in their family's future. Then, out of nowhere, Lauren ended the engagement. Her parents never forgave her for it. Her brother kept talking. After the breakup, their parents spent years trying to get Daniel and Lauren back together. Every time she visited, they brought him up. They invited him to family events, hoping she'd come to her senses. Then I came along. Suddenly, their plan was over. Lauren had moved on. Worse, she had picked someone they didn't approve of. I wasn't rich. I didn't come from an influential family. I worked a regular job. In their eyes, I had stolen their daughter from the life they had planned for her. They thought I had trapped her before she could realize her mistake and go back to Daniel. I didn't say anything for a moment. I just let it sink in. Everything finally made sense. The cold treatment, the vague excuses, the way they had been trying to push me out since the beginning. It was never about tradition. It was never about family rules. It was about Daniel. Lauren came back into the room and sat down next to me. I looked at her and asked if she wanted to know. She nodded. So I told her everything. She didn't move for a long time. Then, without a word, she picked up her phone and started dialing. Her parents didn't pick up, so she called again and again. Finally, Susan answered. Lauren didn't even give her time to speak. She demanded the truth. Was this about Daniel? Had they really spent years trying to get them back together? There was silence. Then finally, her mother sighed. We just wanted what's best for you. Lauren asked again, was that why they had been excluding me? No denial, no excuses, just another sigh. You could have had a different life. That was all Lauren needed to hear. She told them she wouldn't be speaking to them again unless they took full responsibility for everything. Then she hung up and blocked their numbers. That was it. No contact. For real this time. The holidays are coming up, and for the first time, it's just the two of us. No drama, no guilt trips, no more playing along with people who never saw me as family in the first place. Lauren's done, and so am I. Update 3. A week after Lauren blocked her parents, the guilt tripping started again, this time through email. Mark and Susan sent a long message to Lauren, claiming she was being manipulated into abandoning her family. They insisted she had changed since marrying me and accused me of turning her against them. It was the same narrative they had pushed before, but now they were framing it as if Lauren was a victim, being controlled by her own husband. Lauren didn't respond. A few days later, another email arrived. This time, it was a peace offering. They suddenly extended an invitation, for both of us, to spend Christmas with them. But there was a catch. I was only welcome if I apologized for making things difficult. Lauren showed me the email. I didn't even need to think about it. There was nothing to apologize for. I wasn't going to beg for a spot in a family that had spent years trying to erase me. Lauren replied once, short and to the point. If OP isn't welcome as my husband, then I'm not coming. This conversation is over. That set them off. Mark called her that night. She didn't answer. The next morning he tried again. This time, Susan left a voicemail, but the message was completely different from their earlier guilt tripping. Just a day ago, they had been pushing for a peaceful reunion, yet now, they were berating her for being disloyal. It was clear they weren't interested in compromise, just control. Then the conversation took a turn. They brought up future grandkids. Even though we don't have kids yet, they made it clear, if she keeps choosing me over them, they might not be in their future grandchildren's lives. It wasn't a direct threat, but the message was clear: rethink your decision, or there will be consequences. Lauren sat on the couch, reading the message over and over. Then she picked up her phone and called her parents. They answered immediately. She asked them point blank, "Is this really about Daniel?" They dodged the question. They were just concerned for her well-being. They only wanted what's best for her. She hung up without another word. That night, I got a message from an unknown number. Mark. He said he just wanted to talk. No apology, no acknowledgement of what they had done. Just a demand for my attention. I ignored it. Then the unexpected happened. Daniel messaged Lauren. His number had been buried in her phone for years. They hadn't spoken since they broke up, so when his name appeared, she froze. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't aggressive. He just told her he had nothing to do with any of this. Lauren asked him why he was reaching out now. His answer: he had heard from mutual friends that her parents had never let go of the idea of them getting back together. When Lauren pressed him for details, he admitted it. Mark and Susan had been inviting him to family events, even after we got married. They kept him around, hoping that one day Lauren would come to her senses. Lauren sat in silence for a long time after reading that. Her own parents had been actively working against her marriage for years. It wasn't just passive disapproval, it was sabotage. She picked up her phone, typed one final message to them, and hit send. "Until you admit what you've done and apologize, we're done." Then she blocked them. For good. Update 4. Blocking her parents didn't stop them. If anything, it made them more desperate. Instead of apologizing, Mark and Susan went on the attack. Since they could no longer reach Lauren directly, they decided to control the narrative. They started contacting extended family members, telling them Lauren was being brainwashed, that I had manipulated her into cutting them off. The smear campaign spread fast. Some of Lauren's aunts and uncles reached out, saying they were worried about her. They had heard I was controlling, that I didn't let her talk to anyone, that I had isolated her from her family. It didn't stop there. Susan took it to Facebook. She posted one of those dramatic, passive-aggressive statuses: "Losing a daughter to a manipulative man is the worst pain a mother can feel. One day, she'll see the truth. Until then, all we can do is pray." It didn't mention names, but everyone knew who she was talking about. Some of their relatives immediately jumped in to support them, commenting things like, "She'll come back when she realizes the truth," and "Family always wins in the end." Others were skeptical. Lauren had never been the type to be easily influenced. She had always been independent, always made her own choices. A few relatives called them out. Then, her brother stepped in. He posted a reply under Susan's status. "Lauren isn't lost. She's just tired of the manipulation. If you really cared about her, you'd respect her decisions instead of turning this into a public pity party." The post exploded. Family members started arguing in the comments. Some took Mark and Susan's side. Others defended Lauren. But the damage was done. They had made this public, and now everyone had an opinion. Then, they tried to involve my parents. Mark called my father out of nowhere, pretending to be concerned. He claimed he was worried about Lauren and wanted to talk some sense into me. My dad wasn't having it. He shut it down immediately, telling Mark that he had no business interfering in our marriage. Then, he hung up and blocked him. Lauren was disappointed. Not in my parents, but in her own family. Some of them believed her parents' lies. A few even tried pressuring her to forgive and forget. She wasn't interested. She went through her phone and blocked every single relative who tried to guilt trip her into talking to her parents again. That was when the fake accounts started. I started getting messages from anonymous profiles. Some of them pretended to be concerned. Strangers warning me that Lauren's parents would never give up. Others outright accused me of stealing Lauren from them. Lauren and I looked at each other and realized this was never going to stop. So we made a decision. Instead of spending the holidays dealing with their drama, we booked a trip. A week in a different state. Just the two of us. No calls, no texts, no toxic family ruining our peace. Before we left, Lauren sent one last message to her parents. "Until you take full responsibility for everything you've done, I will not be speaking to you. Do not contact me again." Then, she blocked them permanently. For the first time in years, we were finally free. Update 5. 2 days before Christmas, the knock came. It was loud. Not the kind of knock you get from a delivery driver or a neighbor dropping something off. It was deliberate, demanding. Lauren and I were in the kitchen, finishing up some last-minute packing for our trip. We looked at each other. Neither of us was expecting anyone. Then another knock. Harder this time. Lauren walked to the front window, peeked outside, and stiffened. Mark and Susan, standing on our porch bundled up in their coats, looking like they were settling in for a long visit. Lauren didn't open the door. Instead, she called out through it. "What do you want?" Her mother's voice was too sweet. "We just want to talk." Lauren didn't budge. "We have nothing to talk about." That's when the pleading started. Susan's voice got softer. "It's Christmas. Can't we just have a conversation?" Mark chimed in, saying, "This has gone on long enough. We're still family." I walked over and stood beside Lauren. This wasn't going anywhere. I spoke up, making it clear. "Unless you're here to take accountability for everything you've done, we have nothing to say." Silence. Then the excuses started. They weren't here to argue. They just wanted to put things behind us. Susan shifted her tone, playing the holiday card. "Christmas is about forgiveness. Can't we just let go of the past and move forward?" Lauren didn't fall for it. She responded without hesitation. "Forgiveness requires effort, not just pretending nothing happened." Mark let out a frustrated sigh. "This isn't about Daniel." Lauren didn't let him off the hook. "Then why did you keep inviting him to family events after I got married? Why did you try to push him back into my life?" More deflection. More excuses. "We only wanted what's best for you." Lauren's patience ran out. "You disinvited my husband from family events. You lied to me. You tried to manipulate me into leaving my own marriage. And now you just want to move forward, like none of it happened." Mark stepped closer to the door. "We're not leaving until we talk this out." I was done. "This conversation is over. Leave." They didn't move. Mark crossed his arms. "We'll stay here until you're ready to talk." Lauren pulled out her phone and dialed. A few seconds later, her brother picked up. She told him what was happening. His response was immediate. "I'll handle it." Less than 5 minutes later, he called their bluff. Mark's phone rang. He picked up, and within seconds, his face changed. His voice dropped. His stance stiffened. Then, without another word, he turned and walked off the porch. Susan hesitated. She stared at Lauren for a long moment. Then, as she stepped off the porch, she muttered, "You'll regret this." We shut the door. Not even an hour later, the final message arrived. A long text from an unknown number. It was everything we expected. Guilt tripping, emotional manipulation, and one last desperate attempt to reel Lauren back in. "Life is too short for grudges. We only wanted what's best for you. We hope you come back to your real family." One day, Lauren didn't reply. She blocked the number. We turned off our phones, finished packing, and left for our trip. For the first time in years, we had a drama-free holiday. Update 6. A few weeks after we got back from our trip, Lauren's phone rang. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. When she checked it later, the message was short but unbelievable. Someone claiming to be a family mediator was asking her to call back regarding a reconciliation with her parents. Lauren played the voicemail twice, then handed me the phone. A lawyer. Mark and Susan had actually hired a lawyer. Lauren called back out of curiosity. The lawyer introduced himself and said he was representing her parents in a family mediation effort. According to him, Mark and Susan deeply regretted how things had escalated and wanted to find a resolution. Then he dropped the real reason for the call. They wanted a formal mediation session to repair the relationship. Lauren didn't let him get far. She shut it down immediately. There's nothing to mediate unless they take full responsibility for their actions. The lawyer hesitated. Then, after a beat, he suggested a compromise. Her parents were willing to talk, but only if she agreed to spend the next holiday season with them alone, without me. When she refused, any pretense of peace was dropped. Within days, they pivoted from mediation to calling her HR, trying to frame me as controlling. Lauren hung up. The next morning, another email arrived. This time it was directly from Mark and Susan. "We don't want to fight anymore. We just want to make things right. If you agree to spend the holidays with us next year, just you, no distractions, we can start fresh." Lauren didn't even hesitate. She replied, "There is nothing to discuss unless you accept my marriage and stop trying to control me." Minutes later, another email. This time it wasn't fake kindness. "You're choosing a man over your own blood. We raised you. We were there before him, and we'll be here after he's gone. One day you'll see how much you've hurt us." Lauren didn't reply. Then Daniel called me. His number was buried deep in my phone. We had never spoken directly before, but I wasn't entirely surprised. Lauren's brother had hinted that Daniel might have been involved in some way. I picked up, and before I could say anything, he sighed. "I should have told you sooner." I picked up, and he got straight to the point. "I should have told you sooner." He sounded exhausted. He wasn't calling to defend himself. He was calling to confess. Mark and Susan had tried everything to get him back with Lauren, even after she was married, even after she cut contact. Then he dropped the final bombshell. They tried to convince him to crash our wedding. The plan? Show up unannounced, pull Lauren aside, and talk to her one last time. Daniel refused. He wasn't interested in Lauren anymore. But Mark and Susan had spent months trying to wear him down, insisting that Lauren would come to her senses if she just saw him again. Lauren stood frozen as I repeated his words. Her parents had tried to sabotage our actual wedding day. She grabbed her laptop and started compiling everything. The messages, the emails, the lawyer's voicemail, the social media harassment. I told her it was time to protect ourselves legally. We started looking into restraining orders. That night, the final letter arrived. A long handwritten note. Mark and Susan's last attempt. We love you. You'll always be our daughter. We just want what's best for you. Lauren didn't even read the whole thing. She tore it up, blocked them on every platform, every email, every possible number. We documented the violation and sent it to our lawyer. If they tried again, there would be legal consequences. This time, there was no going back. Update 7. A month after blocking her parents for good, Lauren's boss called her into his office. It wasn't about work. Someone had called HR, claiming to be her concerned parent. The story was absurd. They claimed Lauren had become distant, that she was being isolated by a controlling husband, and that they just wanted to make sure she was okay. Lauren's boss wasn't buying it. HR documented the complaint but dismissed it outright, noting that there was no credible evidence of their claims. When Lauren followed up, they assured her it would not affect her standing at work. The call was documented and dismissed, but it didn't stop there. Later that day, another email arrived. This time, it was from her lawyer. Her parents had tried contacting him too. They had framed it as a family misunderstanding and claimed they just wanted to fix things. Lauren had enough. She instructed the lawyer to send a formal cease and desist letter, making it clear any further contact would result in legal action. For a week, nothing happened. Then, one night, we heard a knock at the door. Police. They had received an anonymous tip about a woman being held against her will. Lauren stepped forward immediately. Calm, direct, unshaken. She showed them her ID, her phone, our home. She answered every question. It was obvious what was happening. One of the officers sighed, shook his head, and said, "We get calls like this sometimes. Family members trying to weaponize the system." He took down a report and warned that filing false police reports could lead to serious consequences. If it happened again, they would escalate it further. He filed a report about the false call. That was the final push we needed. The next day, we officially started the process for a restraining order. But Mark and Susan weren't done yet. Some of Lauren's friends started getting messages. Her parents had moved on to a new tactic: third-party interference. The messages were all the same. "Have you seen Lauren lately? We're worried. We think OP is keeping her from us. If you see her, just tell her we love her." One of Lauren's closest friends snapped. She responded, telling them to leave Lauren alone, and that everyone knew what they were doing. Then she screenshotted everything and sent it to us. Their behavior was pushing more people away. Extended family members started to distance themselves. The same people who had initially supported Mark and Susan were now seeing the manipulation firsthand. Then, the restraining order was approved. Mark and Susan could no longer contact us. No emails, no calls, no messages through other people. If they violated it, they would face real consequences. But instead of stopping, they spun the story. They told relatives that Lauren was overreacting, that we had destroyed the family. Then, the final act of desperation. A public post. "Sometimes, children lose their way. All we can do is pray for them. We miss you, Lauren. We'll always be here when you come back to your real family." Lauren saw it, but she didn't get angry. She felt relief. They had nothing left. No control, no power, no influence. For the first time, they couldn't touch her. Update 8. The restraining order was officially approved. Mark and Susan were barred from contacting us in any form. No emails, no calls, no third-party messages. If they tried, there would be legal consequences. They fought it in court. Their argument: families should talk things out, not involve the law. The judge wasn't having it. Years of evidence, the exclusion, the manipulation, the harassment, the weaponized police welfare check, all laid out in front of them. They lost. With no way to reach Lauren, they started playing the victim. They went to extended family, whining about how she abandoned them. But now, no one cared. Even their closest relatives were done with the drama. People had watched them spiral for months. They saw the social media posts, the harassment, the obsessive attempts to control her. It was exhausting. So, people stopped engaging. Their audience was gone. Lauren and I decided to start fresh. We packed up and moved to a new state, new home, new life. No toxic family lurking in the background. Lauren had debated keeping her maiden name for years, but after everything, she fully took mine. It wasn't about erasing her past, it was about closing that chapter for good. For the first time in years, we had a peaceful holiday. Just us. No guilt, no phone calls, no passive-aggressive messages. Then, out of nowhere, Daniel reached out one last time, not to stir up drama, just to say he was relieved we got away from them. He had dodged their interference too. We wished each other well, and that was it. Lauren's brother spent New Year's with us. It was his first holiday without their parents, but he was done with them too. We made new traditions, ones that weren't built on control. Then, the final attempt, an email from a different account. We didn't open it. Blocked. They tried one last time, through my parents. It didn't work. Immediate block. That was it. They had lost every way in. We set firm boundaries. Any mention of Mark and Susan was shut down. There was nothing left to say. Lauren started therapy, not because she was struggling, but because she wanted to process everything and move forward. We started planning for the future. Kids, a real family, one built on love, not control. No guilt, no manipulation, no more looking back. For the first time, we were truly free.